Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Can we start? Am I audible? Okay, let's start the discussion then. Sir, proportion tax only on physical attribute because on electric bill after specific units it charges more than it comes under which type? Again, for consumption you're paying taxes, and that is electricity consumption taxes, or let's say charges that you're paying. Is it a tax? Charges that you're paying, is it a tax? No, that is not a tax, by the way. There was one more interesting question. If government is imposing income tax already in under direct tax, then after expenditure already introduce GST, then it should not cascading to each other because I already paid whatever I earned. Please explain. Again, the logic is that on consumption you're paying different tax, on your income you're paying a different tax. Both are different. There is no combination between both of these taxes. So both are different taxes. Don't complicate the issue here. Okay, so let's start. One more set of reform which has been implemented by the government is basically the concept of honoring the honest, the transparent taxation system. Now, under the transparent taxation system, three pillars are there. One is a faceless assessment, second one is a faceless appeal, and the third one is a taxpayer charter. Basic knowledge: faceless assessment, faceless appeal, and a taxpayer charter. Let me start with the faceless assessment and appeal here. The government of India in 2020 basically decided that let's introduce certain important reforms which will help us in basically, let's say, implementation and making the taxation system much more easier for a common man. What do you mean by that? Let me take a very simple example. Imagine you have paid taxes. Now you want to go to the tax authority and basically let's say you want to change the information in that particular let's say the tax returns that you have filed, or you certain let's say details have been asked from you, you will have to submit those details, etc, etc. All I'm trying to say is, whenever you think of let's say interaction with the tax officials, right, let's say for giving certain documents, getting certain clarity for them from them, etc., there is always a scope of taxpayer harassment. I understand. There's always a scope of taxpayer harassment. That is, for example, if you go to a tax official, and you want to submit documentation, they are not very cordial in nature, right? They basically make you wait. They will simply humiliate you. They will try to doubt on you, etc, etc. So in order to make the process much more transparent, increase the efficiency in the system, if there is any scope of corruption, to eliminate the scope of corruption, etc., government introduced the concept of transparent taxation. Under this, the first very important pillar is faceless assessment. What is this faceless assessment? Simple. You will file the income tax returns. I'll write the short form here, ITR. You will file income tax returns. UPSC will not ask you this process. Don't worry. Don't worry, sir, under which section of Income Tax Act I need to file income tax returns, etc, etc. What is income tax returns? You are paying the taxes that you owe to the government and you are submitting the documents. That's it. That is income tax returns. Now, when you file these income tax returns through a centralized process will go to a centralized system which is called as a National Faceless Assessment Center. NFAC, National Faceless Assessment Center. And the National Faceless Assessment Center will send these documents to tax officials, tax authorities, to evaluate these documents. Simply look at the documents, whether the proof that you have given, it is correct or not. The amount of taxes that you have paid, it is correct or not. They will have to check all these documents. This process is called as a faceless assessment system. Is it okay? The process is referred to as faceless assessment system. Why it is called a faceless assessment? I'll give a very simple example. Imagine a document, that is a tax document, will come to me. Now, if I know that it is your tax document, right, because the name is there, your PAN number is there, your address is there, etc. If I come to know that it is your document, can I simply say there's a scope of corruption in the system? Just think of it. I'm not saying you will do it. Is it possible? Of course, yes, there is a possibility. But if you mask the information of the taxpayer, mask means hide the information of the taxpayer, give the documents to the tax officials. Now the tax official doesn't know whose tax document these are. Don't you think the system will become much more efficient? Right? The system will become much more efficient in terms of, let's say, transparency will become higher. Tax officials do not know whose right papers they are looking into, and you as a taxpayer don't know which tax authority or which tax official is actually looking at your documents. So this concept is called as a faceless assessment system. NFAC has been set up for this very reason. Second one is faceless appeal. What is the idea of a faceless appeal? Imagine you will have a look at my income tax documents. I have paid an income tax of, let's say, 2 lakh rupees. But your calculation, as per your assessment, I should not be paying 2 lakh rupees. Rather, I should be paying 3 lakh rupees. I've claimed income of this, I've claimed deduction of this, etc., etc., etc. My calculation, I'm supposed to pay 2 lakh, I've paid it. But you will basically come to know that I've kept a certain fixed deposit somewhere. I've earned interest. I'm supposed to pay, right? Let's say income tax on that. So what you will do? You will send a tax notice to the taxpayer. Now I want to appeal against it. I want to basically say, no, those FDs are not mine. It is somebody else's. There's a mistake from your side. I want to make an appeal. Earlier, I was supposed to go to tax office. I am supposed to give a writing. I'm supposed to submit a lot of documents. Don't you think that could lead to harassment of the taxpayers? Now, government says you don't have to do that. You want to appeal against the order issued by the tax officials, tax department. All you need to do is, right, basically there is a system which has been set up, National Faceless Appeals Center. You can log on to this appeals center and file an appeal against the tax demand. Right, so these are the two very important pillars. Any issues with this? One is a faceless assessment. Second one is faceless appeals. Right, that is, assessment means checking your documents to find out whether you have submitted the right documents or not. Faceless appeal means if more demand for taxes have been done from you, you don't have to physically go to the office. You can do it online itself now. Faceless assessment, faceless appeal. The third pillar of the taxpayer reforms is the taxpayer charter. And what is the idea of a charter? Charter basically refers to a document. In simple terms, a document referring to certain do's and don'ts. In this charter, Government of India has given certain commitments for the tax department and certain obligations for the taxpayers. For example, if I am a taxpayer, whatever, right, let's say whatever taxes I'm paying to the government, I will have to have right documentation and proof of these expenditures I'll have to submit. I will always have to be honest whenever I submit the documentation to the government. I'll have to keep a record of all the transactions that I've been involved in. I'll have to disclose that information at the right point of time to the tax officials, etc. On the other hand, right, the government also says the tax department has to be very courteous. Courteous in the sense they will have to respect the taxpayers. Because if you have been to a tax department, just see how they behave with a common man. Just like the SBI Bank behaving with you as well as me. Right? So the tax department has to be courteous with the taxpayers. Whatever information has been sought by the taxpayer, that information has to be provided by the tax department. Now, the tax department has to treat the taxpayer as an honest taxpayer rather than doubting every transaction done by the taxpayer, etc. So a charter basically is a set of document. It's a document in simple terms. So a document wherein certain obligations for the taxpayers have been announced, plus certain commitments of the tax department also have been provided by the government. So these are the three pillars of the latest reforms that have been announced by the government in the form of taxation reforms. Done. So this is in totality the discussion about the concept of taxation, the concept of GST, direct taxes, indirect taxes, etc., etc., etc. Now, before I go forward, if you have any doubts regarding whatever I've discussed so far, if you have a doubt, please do let me know. Otherwise, we'll simply take up questions now, have a discussion on the questions. Any doubts? Any doubts? Faceless assessment. You will submit the documents. The tax department will give the documents for an officer to evaluate, but they will hide your identity. In simple terms, who is the taxpayer, that information will not be known to the tax authorities. That's it. That is called as a faceless assessment. Done? Any other question? No questions. Great. So let's start the discussion then. Let's take up questions once again. Okay. So these questions we have not discussed last week. I hope you remember. We did not discuss the questions related to inflation as well as the first chapter, second chapter. Let's solve this. Then we'll take up the questions related to taxation. Let's start. This is the first question. Start answering. Okay, 63% have answered correctly. I'm happy. Which among the following steps is most likely to be taken at the time of economic recession? There is a recession in the country. What do you expect the government, or let's say even the central banker, to do at this point of time? Cut in the tax rate accompanied by increase in interest rate. Do you want RBI to increase the interest rate when there is a recession in the economy? Answer is wrong. Increase in the expenditure on the public projects. Yes, this is one of the options. Let's keep it on the side. Increase in the tax rate accompanied by the reduction in the interest rate. You need to reduce interest rate, agreed. But what about this? Do you need to increase the tax rate in the economy when there is a recession? Consumption will further go down. So C is wrong. Reduction of expenditure on the public project. If there is a recession, if you reduce your expenditure, that is called as a pro-cyclical policy. Wrong. That will further increase the recession, lead to depression. Right option is option B in this context. Any doubts? The right option is option B. Next one. Now you can solve the question related to GDP deflator. We have discussed GDP deflator last week. So let's solve the question on GDP deflator. Right, let me not start the poll here. It's a straightforward question. Right, we'll have a discussion. Start. It's a very, very simple question, by the way. The term GDP deflator is a ratio between, we have solved this, right? In the sense we have discussed GDP deflator. Nominal GDP and real GDP, this is a right option, by the way. Nominal GDP and price level, GDP deflator itself represents the change in the price level. Real GDP and deflation, no, right, option C is also wrong. Nominal GDP and inflation, GDP deflator itself is a measurement of inflation. So the right option for the question is option A. Straightforward application of what we have discussed. I understand. What we have discussed, the same has been asked in the form of question. Now look at the descriptive question. It's simple. Look at the descriptive question. Explain the difference between the computing methodology of India's GDP before 2015 and after 2015 in 150 words. This was asked last year. A simple question to you people, did we not discuss how GDP methodology has changed after 2015? Sir, what do you mean by changed after 2015? For example, earlier we used to calculate GDP by factor cost. Now, market prices. Earlier, we used to collect the production data using ASI. Now we are using MCA21 database. Earlier, the base year was 0405. Now it is 11 and 12. Right. And now we have introduced the concept of gross value addition also, etc. So whatever we have discussed, same, you'll have to put it in 150 words. That's a challenge that you're facing. I understand. That's a challenge that you will actually face here. Why? Right? Argument is simple. The discussion that we have made is basically a discussion that is relevant, or that you can form in the form of essay. You can write an essay on it. But is he asking this in an essay? Absolutely no. 150 words, mind you, 150 words. So these kind of questions have been asked. Please be very, very careful. Now this is from GDP chapter, okay, related to GDP. Now regarding inflation, we have not discussed the questions on inflation as well. Let's take up inflation then. Yeah. Let's start. So question on inflation. Let's start now. Okay, 66% have answered correctly. Good. With reference to Indian economy, demand pull inflation can be caused or increased by which of the following? Right. Now, you might not know all these terminologies, but at least the ones that you know, try to use that and use the elimination method. For example, I would be using this. Right. You can use elimination method. Don't always think of reading everything and solving. Try to use elimination method. So rising interest rates. Simple question to you people. If the demand pull inflation has to be caused, demand has to be higher. Is the logic okay? If the demand pull inflation has to happen, the overall demand in the market has to be higher. Now you tell me, will the demand increase with rising interest rate in the economy? For example, RBI increases repo rate. We'll discuss that later, don't worry. RBI increases the rate of interest. As a result of this, you can take a loan, but at a higher rate of interest. Now you tell me, if the loans have a higher rate of interest, will you take more loans? Right? Obviously, the demand for money will come down. Inflation can be controlled, not promoted. So can I use 5 as a tool here? Try to eliminate. Try to do elimination method. So 5 wherever is there, simply eliminate it. There you go. You can easily solve these kind of questions. But let me solve it one by one. Expansionary policies. We have discussed this. Monetary policy, fiscal policy. If they expand the money supply, automatically the money supply increases, interest rates will come down, more and more consumption will happen. That could cause a demand pull inflation. Fiscal stimulus, stimulus provided by the government, basically assistance provided by the government for specific sector. Simple. For specific sector, when government will target and provide assistance, that is called as a fiscal stimulus. So if government provides fiscal stimulus, again the same concept, will it not increase the money supply? Can it contribute to, let's say, the demand growth in the economy? Of course, the answer is yes. Inflation indexation of the wages. And very tricky statement. Inflation indexation of the wages. Meaning what? Imagine inflation, right, happens in an economy by 10%. That is, the rate of inflation is 10%. Meaning what? What goods you are able to purchase at 100 rupees last year now will become 110. Now imagine last year your wages were also 100 rupee. What do you mean by inflation indexation of the wages? With change in the inflation by 10%, your wages will also change by 10%, which will lead to what? Your wages becoming 110. Now simple question to you people. The prices of the commodities has changed, and by the same proportion your wages also have changed. Now tell me, will it going to, or will this lead to higher demand in the market? Will this change the demand in the market? Answer is simply no. right? So inflation indexing the wages is not going to contribute to the demand in the market. Higher purchasing power, rather than purchasing power becoming low, if your money can purchase more and more goods in the market, obviously that could contribute to demand pull inflation. So right option for the question is option A, 1, 2 and 4. Next question. If you have a doubt in any of the questions, raise it so that I can address it and then we can go to the next question. Okay. And by the way, all these questions that I'm going to discuss, I have discussed, I'm discussing and will discuss are from previous year papers only. Okay, 65% good. With reference to, again spelling mistake is there, don't worry, to inflation in India, which of the following statement is correct? Controlling the inflation in India is the responsibility of Government of India only. Statement A is wrong. Reserve Bank of India has no role in controlling inflation. Wrong. Decreased money circulation helps in controlling the inflation. Correct. Increased money circulation helps in controlling the inflation. Wrong. Okay. Right. So right option is option C here. Next one. Can we do this directly rather than starting a poll? Because it's a just factual question. Which of the following brings out the consumer price index number for the industrial workers? That is CPI IW. Question is about CPI IW, right? Consumer price index for industrial workers. Right? Basically, argument is simple. It's a factual question. If you remember, I've given a table. CPI IW is there, CPI UNME is there, and CPI AL, agriculture labor, is there. And I told you a trick. First one and the last one, right? First one as well as the last one, it is Ministry of Labor. And the middle one is basically Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Okay, right? So Ministry of Labor, right option for the question is the Labor Bureau. Okay, Labor Bureau, right? That is right option is option C here. Obviously, Reserve Bank of India is wrong. Department of Personnel and Training is also wrong. Department of Economic Affairs, that is Department of Economic Affairs, falls under Minister of Finance. I understand this. Ministry of Finance. Minister of Finance is not involved in publication of indices like this. Okay. Next, tricky question. Right? Solve this. Give it a try. Even if you don't understand it, please don't worry, because certain technical terms are there. I will discuss that and I will give you the right option. Don't worry. Solve this. Okay, 42% have answered correctly. Good. Others, don't worry. Follow the discussion very carefully now. Those who have not understood or found this question very difficult, reason is there because one, question is slightly tricky. Second, certain concepts that you don't know have been used here. Let's start. Inflation benefits debtors. What do you mean by a debtor? What do you mean by a bondholder? Simple. Whenever you talk about the market, there is a lender, there is a borrower. Right? Let's go point by point. Point number one, there is a lender, there is a borrower. Now, rather than using the term lender and borrower, we can also use the terms bondholder is a lender. I'll come to this. Right? And let's say a borrower could be, let's say, a borrower who has taken a housing loan. This is one example. Housing loan, right? For example, I have a housing loan. I'm a borrower. Otherwise, other set of technical terms is a lender is called as a creditor and a borrower is a debtor. Those terms are actually used here, so be very, very careful. So a lender is called as a creditor and a borrower is also referred as a debtor. Now, first point is clear. I've not explained it, but debtor term is clear to you. Second, now there's a term called as a bondholder. Now imagine, I'll give a very simple example. Imagine this piece of paper is there. I will give you this piece of paper and for 1 year, I will take 100 rupee from you. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Very, very simple concepts. Try to remember like this. I will give you this piece of paper. I will collect 100 rupees from you. After 1 year, I will give you 100 plus interest. Now this piece of paper is nothing but a bond. This piece of paper is nothing but a bond. Now can I define it like this? A bond is an instrument which will help in borrowing from the market. Let me know if you're finding it difficult, if you're not understanding. These are very simple concepts. Once you understand, done and dusted. Bond is an instrument which will help you in borrowing from the market. That is, the one who is issuing the bond actually is borrowing. Now, is it okay if I say, if I'm issuing a bond, I'm taking 100 rupees from you, I'm a borrower, you are a lender? Let me know. I'm giving this piece of paper, I'll call this as a bond. I will take 100 rupees from you. Can I call myself as a borrower, you as a lender? And if you are the lender, can I call you as a creditor here? Simple. If you're a lender, can I also refer to as a creditor, me as a debtor? Now have a look at this. The whole two statements can be defined or can be simplified like this. Inflation, does it benefit those who are borrowing, or does inflation benefit those who are lending? Is the logic okay? Right, I've converted the statements here. Does inflation benefit those who are borrowing in the market, or does the inflation benefit those who are lending in the market? Is the point clear? Anybody has an issue, let me know. Is the point clear? Bond, right? What is a lender? What is a borrower, etc. That is first very important point. Second very important point, do not confuse the term benefit with profit and loss. That's very, very important. Do not confuse the word benefit with profit and loss. Let me prove it. All of you have got vaccinated. First round, second round, booster dose, etc., etc. Now, if you get vaccinated, do you get the benefit of vaccination or do you earn profit? Think of it and answer. Right? When you get vaccinated, do you get a benefit from the vaccine or do you earn profit? Benefit? If you understand? So, benefit is not equal to profit. Do not replace that word and start thinking in that terms. Because once I explain it, some of you will say, sir, but they are losing, but they are earning profit, but they are doing this, etc., etc. Benefit is not equal to profit. Do not be confused about it. Now, let me start. Imagine here is a basket of goods and services. Right now, the cost of the basket of goods and services, 100 rupee. Just understand this carefully. The cost of basket of goods and services is 100. Now, I will borrow 100 rupees from you. Is it okay? I'll borrow 100 rupees from you. After 1 year, imagine the inflation is there. As a result of this, the cost for the same basket of goods and services is 110. I will return the 100 rupees. Don't worry about interest. Focus on the concept here. I've taken 100 rupees when the basket of goods and services cost is 100. I will return the 100 rupees when there is inflation in the economy. As a result of this, the price of the same basket of goods and services has increased to 110. Now, is it okay if I characterize all of this in simple statement like this? In another way, I'm telling the same thing like this. I took 100 rupee from you when the purchasing power of 100 rupee was higher and returned back to you when the purchasing power of 100 is lower. Just think of it, right? Just think of this. I took 100 rupees from you when its purchasing power was higher and returned it to you when its purchasing power was lower. And if I talk about you now, you gave me 100 rupee when the purchasing power of 100 rupee was higher. You got the money back when the purchasing power of 100 rupees is lower. So tell me, in this situation where there is inflation in the economy, is the borrower getting the benefit of inflation or the lender getting the benefit of inflation? I hope you understand. Is it the borrower who is getting the benefit of inflation, or is it the lender who is getting the benefit of inflation? It is the borrower who gets the benefit of inflation. Is it okay? Again, the question is not about interest. Question is not about profit. Question is not about loss. Question is, inflation is there between lender and borrower. Who will be negatively affected by it? Who will get the advantage of it? I hope you understand my statement here. Question is not about interest. Question is not about profit and loss. Many of you will start thinking, but sir, lender will charge right interest. They will earn interest. Is the question about interest? I hope you understand. Is the question about interest? In that case, whether there is inflation or no inflation doesn't matter. Question is never about the interest. Question is, inflation is there. Who gets the benefit of it? It is always the borrowers who will get the benefit because they have taken the money when the purchasing power of money is higher, and they are giving the money back when the purchasing power of money is lower. So they are going to get the benefit. Right option for the question is option A here. Right? It is right option is option A. Sir, what will happen in the context of deflation? Apply the reverse of it. Rather than inflation, if there is a deflation, apply the opposite outcome. You will get the answer to your question. Okay, next question. Okay, 44% have answered correctly. Why? It's a straightforward question. And by the way, right, I'll solve it. Don't worry. Did you people read what RBI said about core inflation, non-core inflation, sticky inflation, headline inflation, etc.? Did you people read or not in the newspaper? Right? Are Baba, answer it. Right? Did you basically come across the concept? Oh yeah, sir, I have not read. Why? Why last week did RBI not announce a monetary policy change? I hope you understand. In the last week, when I say last week, couple of days ago, did RBI not increase the interest rate in the market? And what was one of the reasons why they increased the interest rate? They spoke about core inflation, my dear. You are supposed to read the newspapers. That is where the application of what you have learned in the classroom will come into reality. Otherwise, how do you understand what you're reading is necessary or not? How do you understand what you're reading is applicable to read the newspapers or not? Please read. I will not order. I'm asking you. Please read. Okay, come back to this. With reference to the economy, the core inflation is considered to be a better indicator than the headline inflation because, straightforward, option A, core inflation excludes certain items that are subject to sudden and short-lived price movements. Right? Because there are certain commodities which are excluded from the basket, remaining commodities, we use it to calculate inflation. Why do we exclude this? Because the prices for these are very often changing, fluctuate very often. These are not stable, right? So option A is the right one. Okay. Okay, solve it. Okay, so which one of the following factors can cause cost to push inflation in an economy? All price increases in the world, fluctuation in the production of food grains, imposition of high commodity taxes. All of the above. Right option is option D, all of the above. Now a descriptive question. Do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left the Indian economy in good shape? Give reasons in support of your arguments. Now, here is a very important pointer or a very important point I want to make to you people. Whenever questions are asked in UPSC, do not go with the assumption that whatever you have read in a book will be asked in UPSC. That would be the biggest mistake that you do in the context of GS paper 3 economics. Why? We are discussing the second descriptive question today. One question, any book that you have read for GS paper 3 economics, you can answer. Because any book, for example, you have read Nitin Singhania, that Singhania, this Singhania, they would have discussed how the GDP methodology of calculation has changed after 2015 in India. That is a straightforward question which has been picked up from the book. If that comes, well and good, you have already mugged up, you'll be able to answer those kind of questions. But here is one more kind of a question. Do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left the Indian economy in good shape? Give reasons in support of your argument. The question itself is so ambiguous. Ambiguous in the sense the question doesn't say whether there is a good shape of the Indian economy or whether Indian economy is in a good shape or bad shape. It says you decide. Right? This is the fact. Steady growth rate is there and low inflation is there. That's a fact. You decide whether the Indian economy is in good shape or bad shape. But tell me why. What is your argument? Please tell me that. That is what the question is actually asking. So that's the reason my argument always has remained the same. Every batch, it will remain the same. Read newspapers. You will get a lot of information from the newspapers which you can utilize to provide answers to these kind of questions. Now, what should be the answer to this kind of a question? And again, please understand, when they ask about this kind of a GDP growth rate, this was asked, I believe, around 2 years ago. Right? Don't add about, right, the based on the answer that I've given. Don't say, sir, but in the last 2 years there was a pandemic, etc., etc. If you see the GDP of Indian economy, the growth in the Indian economy until 2018 and 2019, it was in a good shape. Only in 2020 we entered into recession, but till then economic growth rate was good. It's not that bad also, it was good. Inflation rate was under control. For example, sir, how do you say inflation rate is under control? I hope remember we discussed monetary policy framework agreement earlier, that is last week, and I'd given you data. Before the implementation of the inflation targeting, on an average in the 5 years, inflation rate was how much? After 2016, for next 5 years, inflation rate has been how much? And did you not see inflation actually stabilizing around 4% after the implementation of monetary policy framework agreement? Answer is yes, by the way. Only in the last 1.5 years, because of the supply side factors as well as the demand side factors, there has been a rise in the inflation rate. But before that, inflation rate has remained stable. So GDP growth rate was there, inflation rate was under control. Right? Is it that the economic shape or economy is in a good shape or bad shape? You'll have to give, right, arguments in favor or against. Right? So have a look at this. The GDP growth rate as well as inflation in the recent economy have remained steady. And that is where, trust me, that is where the data that you have brought or that the data that you have got from various government documents will help you. For example, I told you inflation for last 5 years from 2016 has remained steady at 3.7%. Where will you get this data? RBI document. It was there in the newspapers. So GDP growth rate as well as inflation has remained steady, very much right under the control as such. With steady GDP growth rate, the size of the GDP has increased, and whenever there's a rise in the size of the GDP, it is generally associated with rising employment, higher incomes earned by the people, rise in the per capita income, reduction in the poverty numbers, etc. But having said so, please understand this. Having a lower rate of inflation, right, very, very low rate, let's say 1%, 1.5% is also generally not good. We want inflation to be around 4%, And in the last 5 years, inflation has stagnated around 3.7%, which is a very good number considering Indian economy. Right, so you talked about GDP growth rate as well as a low inflation rate. But having said so, there were certain issues which you'll have to flag. That is, somewhere around 2018 and 2019 as well as 20, there was issue of a rising unemployment. Right, the unemployment rate has actually increased, and especially during pandemic, this has been much higher. Rising food inflation, it was a problem during pandemic. Even today, it is a problem. Even 2018, it was a problem. There is a huge amount of distress in the agriculture sector. Farmers are not able to earn sufficient amount of income. There are a lot of imbalances, supply disruptions that have taken place, as a result of which earnings of the farmers have not been up to the mark. The government of India stated that they want to double the income of the farmers, they have not been able to achieve that so far. Right? There is a stress in various sectors such as civil aviation market, that is aeroplane industry, civil aviation market, for that matter, let's say tourism sector now because of the pandemic, or for that matter, let's say even telecom sector. Right? There are certain issue points, or let's say pressure points in the Indian economy, which government of India needs to focus on and address these particular issues. So this is how you generally address these kind of questions. Done? Right, so this is one more descriptive question. Please have a look at it. Regarding taxation, right, we will basically take up the questions related to taxation tomorrow. I don't want to spend all the time related to or discussing the taxation, or let's say questions itself. Today you revise, tomorrow we'll take up questions on taxation, we'll finish the questions on taxation. And let me start with a new chapter, very important for UPSC examination, money and banking. Now before I start the discussion, here's a very important point. Take up any question paper in the preliminary examination for last 5 years. You will see that around 4 to 5 questions are associated with this chapter. I hope you understand the importance of this chapter. Right, around 4 to 5 questions on an average will come from this chapter, that is money and banking. And if let's say 4 questions have come, if you pick up 4 questions and try to find out, 2 questions will come from RBI, Reserve Bank of India. So that is the precise reason this chapter is very relevant, very much important for your civil services examination, specifically preliminary examination. For whatever reason, I also don't know, for whatever reason, so far in the last 5 years, UPSC has not touched the chapter in the mains examination. But prelims, definitely yes. And it will continue, trend will continue, because the RBI is very important for you. Okay. So let me start discussion from this chapter. What are the areas that we'll be covering under this? We'll start basically with the concept of money and the types of money. Then we'll discuss the functions of a bank, structure of banking in India, and the most important and high amount of discussion we'll have regarding Reserve Bank of India. Because questions are asked regarding RBI, we'll spend a lot of time on RBI itself. Then we'll have a discussion about bank mergers, rate regimes, Basel guidelines, Narsimham committee, issue of NPS, non-performing assets, payment banks, small finance bank. We'll also discuss NABFID, National Banking for Financing Infrastructure Development. In fact, in today's newspaper, not in Hindu, that's the biggest problem. In fact, in today's newspaper, there's an article on NABFID, National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development. After the class is over, do me a favor, go to Google and type NABFID plus funds. You will see that yesterday there was an announcement by NABFID to issue bonds and raise money in the market. Right, so NABFID is very important. We'll have a discussion. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, we will have a discussion. NARCL, National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited, very important. We'll have a discussion in this chapter. Okay, now let me start. Before that, there is a question. If we watch Economic Weekly of your weekly session, can we answer this kind of a question? I would simply say it will help you. It will definitely help you. Lot of these articles which have come, right, we are basically trying to cover all of these articles. But here is a point, and I'm actually surprised by the fact that our own students do not know this. Until now, we had the practice of having this Economic This Week as a weekly session. Once every week on Monday we used to have it. But we wanted to ensure that on day-to-day basis, whatever comes in the newspaper will be covered. And let's say something appearing on Wednesday, we used to cover on next Monday, which is basically having a lag of around 5 days. So in order to improve the transmission of information from next week, we'll not be having economy this week. Rather than that, we will have the economy sessions on day-to-day basis. But please understand, we will not be having these sessions for a very, very longer duration. We'll have it on day-to-day basis, maybe 10 minutes every day. Most important article would be covered, and that will be the coverage for you. Right? And in fact, I'm basically surprised by the fact that yesterday itself, I don't know how many of you actually read newspaper. There was an article regarding MSCI. Yesterday's Hindu newspaper, there's an article on MSCI. Today's Hindu newspaper, there is an article on MSCI. In fact, yesterday itself, I've made a video regarding what is the implication of this MSCI, and we have uploaded that on the YouTube. If you have done it, right, you don't trust me, please go to that right YouTube channel. You'll realize that yes, we have done. And you'll see that it's my face only that is there in the video. So now please understand this. We want you to read newspapers. We want you to go through the original source, have a look at it. But if you don't have time, at least make an effort to see the videos, understand what is the context, why it is important, etc., etc. Right? So that's the reason. Please keep on watching these YouTube videos as well. A lot of the current affairs we are covering in that. For example, in Hindu newspaper today, there is a very important, very nice article, in fact, regarding lithium deposits, lithium reserves, which have been found in Jammu and Kashmir. Right now, how do you connect it to current situation in the Indian economy? What is the connection to electric vehicles? Because if you read Hindu article, nothing is given. If you don't trust me, read that article. Right? Nothing else is given. They have said, okay, 5.9 million tons is there. Right? The Geological Survey of India has conducted prospecting. They have found out, etc., etc. That will reduce the import dependence. But question is, what is the importance of lithium? How much lithium did we import in the last 5 years? Where lithium is utilized? Right? Apart from India, where else lithium in the global market is present? From whom we are importing it? Right? Why lithium is relevant in the electric vehicle? What about electric vehicle, etc., etc.? All of those areas you will have to understand. Right? So please be very careful. We are uploading a lot of these videos covering current affairs. Please watch it. Okay, let's start. Anyways, it is entirely up to you. I would recommend that you watch it, but it is entirely up to you. Let's start now. I'll start with the basic concept, money. What do you mean by money? Right? For example, if I basically take out, let's say 100 rupees from my pocket and show it to you, what do you understand by this? All of you will simply say, sir, the value of this note is 100. That's it. But beyond that, what will you understand? First point, understand, is this money? All of you will agree. Is this money or not? Answer is yes. But how do you define money? How do you define money? Money is a source which acts as a medium. Money is a medium for conducting transactions. Simple. Right? Money is basically a medium to conduct transactions in the market. What do you mean by medium to conduct transactions in the market? Can you take up this 100 rupee, go to a restaurant, pay 100 rupee, purchase food? So what is a medium of exchange? Exchange means you are giving something, you are getting something. What is a medium of exchange? Money is a medium of exchange. Can you take this 100 rupee, go to, let's say, a theater, right, purchase a ticket? Yes. Can you use 100 rupee, travel in a metro? Yes. Can you use 100 rupee, go to a mobile shop and purchase a mobile? If the cost of the mobile is 100, of course, Apple mobile will not be able to purchase. So argument is very, very simple. Argument is very, very simple. Money is nothing but a medium of exchange. That should be very clear to you. Now, the money that I'm holding in my hand, this money is called as fiat money. I hope you understand. Many of you are giving me a technical explanation. Agreed. You are also correct. For example, there is a definition, there's a student who says, money is anything which is accepted as a common medium of exchange. What I said, you have basically given the same definition in a polished manner. Right? Basically, same thing in a polished manner. Agreed. Right? But the gist of the definition is very simple. Money acts as a medium of exchange. It will facilitate transactions in the market. That is basically the idea of money. Now look at this very carefully. The money that I'm holding in my hand, this is called as fiat money. Right? Fiat money. Right? In fact, in the slide itself, there is an example of fiat money. But let me ask you a very simple question. Go back to your high school. Did we always use this 100 rupee note or 500 rupee note as a medium of exchange? How many of you think from since time immemorial, right, medieval India, right, or before that, did we always use the currency notes that I was holding as a medium of exchange? Answer simply is no. We did not use these currency notes earlier. In fact, earlier, whenever anything was used as a medium of transaction, we started with barter system. Barter. In the context of barter system, it was very simple. Certain goods will be provided in exchange of other goods or services. I hope you understand. Very simple. For example, I will have this bottle. I will sell the bottle to you and you will give me, let's say, 2 apples. Or 2 bananas, or whatever it is, don't worry, 2 coconuts. So whenever goods or services were given in exchange of goods and services, that is referred to as a barter system. But there is a problem with the barter system. What is the problem? Imagine you have, let's say, 2 apples. You want to purchase a bottle. Then you'll have to search for somebody in the market who wants to sell a bottle and get apple. Is it okay? Double coincidence of demand or double coincidence of want. Meaning what? I want to sell bottle, I want to get apple. So in the market, I will have to find out somebody who wants to purchase the bottle and who has apples. For example, imagine there's a person X. Person X wants to purchase bottle, but imagine the person X has a coconut. I don't want coconut, I want apple. So that problem of double coincidence of wants was one of the biggest issues. Second one is, what if you have a perishable product? For example, apple, right? Horticulture commodities. Do you think barter system is favorable for you? Obviously not. Right? Means what? Whenever you have a perishable product, the value of the product will keep on falling at a very fast pace. Whereas, understand this, if you talk about fiat money, you will sell the apple today, I will give you 100. Can you keep this 100 rupee for 1 week, 10 days, 20 days, 1 year, etc.? Can you keep it? Of course, yes. After 1 year, can you use the 100 rupee to purchase a bottle? Answer is yes. So understand the logic here. We initially used a barter system. But from the barter system, we did not suddenly jump to fiat money. Somewhere in between, we started using commodity as a money. Is it okay? Somewhere in between, after barter system, again commodity money is again associated with barter system only. Before we introduced the concept of fiat money, we used, right, let's say, commodity money system itself. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by commodity money? Commodity is any product which has market value. It's simple. Commodity is any product which has certain market value which can be sold. Now, steel is a commodity. Oil is a commodity. Gold is a commodity. Now, have a look at this. Right? Have a look at this. Earlier, have you not come across gold being used as a commodity to conduct transactions? I hope you understand this. In the earlier era, before we started introducing the currency notes, did we not use gold as a medium of exchange? Did we not pay in terms of gold and get certain goods and services? So where have you seen it? Any example? if you have seen any TV serial which talks about, let's say, the ancient past in India or in the global market, you will see that gold will be used as a medium of exchange. Right? Any famous TV serials? Right? Game of Thrones. Again, Game of Thrones is not associated with UPSC. Don't start watching it. But you will see that gold coins are used to conduct transactions. Is it okay? Again, don't write this example also in UPSC. For example, I watched Game of Thrones in which gold was used as a medium of exchange. Absolutely no. A big no-no for you. Don't write those. But example, remember it, it will become very easy for you to understand. In simple terms, commodities were used as a medium of exchange. And because commodities were used as a medium of exchange, this money was referred as commodity money. First point. Second point, imagine you have, let's say, a piece of gold. You want to use it as a medium of exchange, means what? You want to give gold and you want to purchase something from the market. Now, don't you think what is the value of the gold that will determine how much you will be able to purchase from the market? I hope you understand. What is the value of the gold that will determine how much you will be able to purchase from the market? For example, if value of the gold was equal to, let's say, 10 of these bottles, you could simply give me 1 unit of gold. I will give you 10 bottles like this. Any difficulties? Let me know. There is a term called as, right? Just a second. There is a term called as intrinsic value. Intrinsic value. What do you mean by intrinsic value? What is the actual value of the product? What is the market value of certain commodity? That is called as intrinsic value. Let me give you a very simple example. All of you can see this currency note in my hand? Right? Let me know. All of you can see the currency note in my hand. Now imagine in this currency note, RBI governor signature is not there. I hope you understand. RBI governor signature is missing, right? Jali note or fake currency note. If RBI governor signature is missing, what is the value of this piece of paper? I hope you understand. What is the value? Zero. Nobody will be accepting this. You can't purchase anything in the market using this. So what is the value of this piece of paper? Nothing. But because RBI governor signature is there, this piece of paper, using this, you can purchase 100 rupee worth of goods and services in the market. So understand this, there is no intrinsic value for this piece of paper. I hope you understand. There is no value for this piece of paper. Only because RBI governor's signature is there, there is a value for it. In the same way, imagine you have gold. Right? Imagine you have a gold or coin of gold. Don't you think because the coin is made of gold, the value of the gold is basically, right, the value of the coin is nothing but the value of gold itself. So intrinsic value means what is the value of a commodity in the market. So if you use gold as a medium of exchange, don't you think whatever is the value of the gold, that will be equal to value of the commodity money. That will determine how much goods and services you can purchase by giving this commodity money in the market. So in the beginning we used commodity money. It has, or the value of the commodity money was decided by the intrinsic value of the commodity itself. We used shells, we used pearls, we used bronze, we used other metals as well for conducting or for being used as a commodity money. But over a period of time, we have shifted to concept of fiat money. And this 100 rupee note that I'm holding is nothing but a fiat money example itself. That is, in today's situation, rather than using a commodity as a money, what we have done is we have started using rupee coins as well as rupee notes. Is it okay? We have started using rupee coins as well as rupee notes. For example, in India, these are called as rupee coins and notes. In USA, these are called as dollar bills. Different countries might use different names, but the logic is very simple. Government, right? Understand this. Government or the entity owned by the government will print and issue these currencies. Simple. The government or the entities owned by the government is allowed to print and issue these currencies. You are not allowed to print rupees. You can simply say, sir, I've got a color printer. I was simply reading economics, I got bored. So I thought of printing the currencies. If you do that, please don't disclose it to anyone. And basically you'll become Shahid Kapoor of a Farzi TV serial then, or a Farzi web series. So argument is very simple. Currency notes or currency coins are supposed to be printed or minted and issued by government or government authorized entities. And these currencies or this money is referred to as fiat money. And next question to you people, do you think fiat money has any intrinsic value? Just think of it. Right? Do you think the fiat money, does it have any intrinsic value? Right? That is, this is a piece of paper. Does the piece of paper has any value in the market? No. If there is no intrinsic value, some of the experts will say negligible intrinsic value. Okay, some of you are saying yes. My dear, please check it. Intrinsic value means what is the value of the, the commodity here. Commodity is piece of paper. Does piece of paper has any value in the market? Absolutely no. Negligible, or many of the experts will say no intrinsic value. Okay. But please understand, next term is important. Has a very high liquidity. It has very high liquidity. What do you mean by liquidity here? Simple. It is a character of an asset to be converted into money. I'll repeat the statement. Right? What do you mean by liquidity? How quickly you can convert an asset into money is called as liquidity. Right? Now, why do you need to convert asset into money? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine you have 100 rupee and you also have 100 rupee worth of gold. Again, sir, how much will you get 100 rupee worth of gold? A dust like this. Right? Don't worry. Now, simple question to you people. I will come to you. I will simply say this is 100 rupee worth of gold. Give me goods worth 100 rupee. Situation 1. Situation 2. I will bring this 100 rupee to you. I will give it to you. I will ask for 100 rupee worth of goods from you. Don't you think you will accept the payment mostly in the second situation, not very much in the first situation? Let me know. There are two transactions I've provided. In the first situation, I will try to give you gold and purchase goods from you. Second situation, I'll give you money, that is currency note, and basically purchase the goods from you. Now you tell me, don't you think in the second situation where currency note is given, you will accept the payment? In the first situation, you may or may not accept the payment. Right? Some of you will say, no, sir, I will accept the payment. How can I reject you, etc.? My dear, imagine somebody who is not known to you will come to you. Just think of it. Right? You are basically having a very big shop. They will come to you, purchase, let's say 20 lakh worth of goods from you and hand over gold to you. And they'll say this gold is worth 20 lakh rupees. Take it as a payment. Will you accept it? Right? You will not accept it for a very simple reason. One, you don't know the person. Second, there is no compulsion on you to accept gold as a payment. You are supposed to accept rupees as a payment. So understand the logic here. How quickly you can convert an asset into money, that feature is called as liquidity. Now tell me, between a currency note and a gold, which has very high liquidity? I repeat, between a currency note and a gold, which has very high liquidity? Participate. Most of you have gone dormant now. Right? Most of you are like, hey, sir, use the term Farzi web series. I will start watching Farzi. Hey, sir said Game of Thrones. Let me switch to Game of Thrones now. Not at all relevant for UPSC, mind you. Right? So one is currency note and the other one is gold, which has very high liquidity. Currency note, in fact, most liquid asset in the economy. I'll give you another example and I'll ask you a question. Just think of it and answer. 100 rupee in your savings bank account, 100 rupee in your fixed deposit. Which is more liquid? Let me see. Right, 100 rupee in your savings bank account, 100 rupee in your fixed deposit. Which is more liquid to you? It is a savings bank account. Most of you are correct. Thanks a lot. Right, it is savings bank account. Why? Many of you will say, sir, I will get 100 from the FD also. I will get 100 from SB account also. Then why do you say SB account is more liquid? Don't you think the time consumption in withdrawing 100 from SB account is much, much lower? That is the reason I said savings bank account has a very high liquidity. Right? So is the logic okay? Fiat money has a very high liquidity in the economy. Examples of fiat money are currency coins and currency notes, which are also referred as bills. Now, third type of money, fiduciary money or bank money. Fiduciary or bank money. Best example, check. The checks which are issued by the banks are called as fiduciary money. Let me give a very simple example. Imagine you have a very big showroom. I will come to your showroom. I'll purchase goods worth 30 lakh rupees. And understand this, at the time of billing, I will simply open a checkbook, sign, right, and put the amount of 30 lakh, hand it over to you. Is it a compulsion that you must accept the check payment? Just think of it. Is there a compulsion that you must accept the payment through check? Is there a compulsion? Absolutely no. But on the other hand, if I make a payment through cash, is there a compulsion that you are supposed to accept it? Answer is yes. If I make a payment through cash, you are supposed to accept it. Right? Why? Government of India says the currency notes are valid currency notes. Right? These are legal methods of payment. You should accept it. But the check, understand this, I may have money in the bank account. I'm not saying there is no amount of money. I may have money. But please understand this, right? It is basically dependent upon the acceptor of this money. It is dependent upon the confidence that is shown by the acceptor whether this fiduciary money or bank money will be accepted as a medium of exchange or not. You might simply say, sir, I know you. Obviously, you will have money, right? Because you're a faculty, right? If you don't have money, you'll become, right, basically a celebrity in a wrong way. So you might have money, so I'll accept the check payment. But can you do the same with all of them? With everyone? Then what if somebody will come purchase 1 crore rupee worth of goods, hand over the check to you, you go to the bank, deposit the money, deposit the check, there is no money in the account. So the argument is simple. The acceptor of this money will decide whether this will be accepted as a medium of exchange or not. Such money is called as fiduciary money or bank money. Okay, right? That is the third type of money. Fourth one, commercial bank money. Okay, commercial bank money. Let me show an example to you. Let me give you a very simple example. Do not by heart the calculation. It is not relevant for UPSC. Now, what is the calculation provided here? Simple. Let's go step by step. First step, imagine you have 100 rupee. This 100 rupee is there with you. Now, what you will do? You will take the 100 rupee, go to the bank, deposit the 100 rupee in the bank. Now, simple question to you. Do you think the bank will simply collect 100 rupee, keep quiet with that 100 rupee? They will simply collect it, sit quietly. They will put that 100 rupee in there, right? Let's say chest, and very nicely they will sit, looking left, right, looking at the clock, having tea, etc. Obviously, no. The bank will use that 100 rupee, start to give loans in the market. Right? They will provide loans. That is guaranteed. That is the function of a bank itself. But here is a very important point. Some of you will basically say, sir, you have written something by the name of reserves in the slide. Now, tomorrow when I take up RBI in detail, we'll come across this. Don't worry. But let me give a very basic idea. Just think of it and answer. Do you want, if you keep 100 rupee with a bank, do you want the bank to use all the 100 rupee to give a loan? Do you think that is preferable? Don't you think that is more risky to do? That's very, very dangerous. Why? Imagine a situation. You will keep 100 rupee with the bank and the bank will use all the 100 rupee, give it as a loan, to Sri Vijay Mallya ji, or they will give that 100 rupee as a loan to Sri Nirav Modi ji. Now tell me, who is bearing the risk? Whose money at risk here? Your money is at a very, very high amount of risk. So what RBI does is, it will ask the banks to keep aside certain amount of money and use the remaining money to lend in the market. And let's say, for sake of understanding, let's say 10% of the deposit they will have to keep aside. I'll call this as reserve. Out of 100 rupee, 10 rupee is kept aside, 90 rupees is given as a loan to company A. Now, is it okay if I say this? Follow this very carefully. Is it okay if I say this? This 90 rupee loan is nothing but the money that is created by the bank. Created. The bank has not printed money here. Please understand this very carefully. This 90 rupee loan is a money created by the bank. The bank has not actually printed 90 rupees. You have given this 100 rupee with the bank. You have kept it with the bank. But, right, keeping this deposit with the bank has used this deposit to lend 90 rupees out of it in the form of a loan. So, simple idea here, understand this very carefully. Bank is not printing money. Bank is creating loan in the market. Agreed? The bank is creating loans in the market. Now, company A will take a loan of 90. Don't you think company A will take a loan of 90 means they will go to the market, purchase machine? Let's assume they will go to the market, purchase a machine. And now, right, here is basically one more person, B, who has sold the machine to company A. B has this 90 rupees. So what B will do? B will also go to the bank, deposit this 90 rupees. Bank will keep aside 10% of it. Now, right, the bank 2, after keeping 9 rupees out of 90 rupees, has 81 rupees. So don't you think they will again issue it as a loan to another company or another borrower? Now, you don't have to keep on going step by step. All you need to understand is simple. RBI has printed money. Understand this. RBI has printed money, supplied it in the market. The banks will collect the deposits, keep a part of the deposit, fraction of the deposit as a reserve, and use the remaining amount of money to create credit, to create debt, create loans in the market. So far, so good. This process of creating loans in the market, creating debt in the market, it is called as a commercial bank money. This is referred to as commercial bank money. So argument is simple here. Part of the deposits or fraction of the deposits are kept aside. Remaining of the deposits will be used to give loans, create loans in the market. Such a system is called as fractional reserve system. Such a system is basically referred to as a fractional reserve system. Right, done? Right, so this is basically the concept of fractional reserve system. Sir, should the loan of company be in row 1? Don't worry. Right, sir, A, B here, don't worry, my dear. UPSC will not ask you to write this. Just to give you a glimpse of it, I've written it. Right, if that is confusing, let's change this as X only directly. Change this as X. So obviously in the first line, there is only one company A. Again, don't worry about it. Concept is important. Understand this. This process of creating a debt, creation of loans, this is called as a commercial bank money. Right? Don't you think the banking sector in India is involved in the creation of this commercial bank money? Banking sector in USA, is it not involved in the creation of commercial bank money? Of course, the answer is yes. The banking sector in the global market functions on the concept of commercial bank money itself. So these are the 4 types of money. Anybody has a doubt? These are the 4 types of money, right? One is called as the commodity money, where commodity itself is used. Second one is a fiat money, where currency notes or coins issued by the government or authorized entity of the government are issued and used. Third one is a fiduciary money, where the issuer guarantees the payment, but the acceptor, right, the confidence of the acceptor on this money will determine whether this will be accepted or rejected in the market, right? And finally, the commercial bank money, which is nothing but the creation of the loans, creation of the debt in the market, right? So these are the four types of money. Let's go ahead. Let's continue here. What is a banking structure? What is a banking structure in India? Generally, at the top of the banking pyramid, if you basically arrange the bank at the top of the pyramid, you will see there is a Reserve Bank of India, the big brother, right? The Reserve Bank of India, the regulator of the banking sector in the Indian economy. Now, RBI regulates all the commercial banks in India, right? All the commercial banks. Now, what do you mean by a commercial bank? Simple. Any financial institution, specifically, I'm talking about a bank here, any bank that comes under the regulation of Banking Regulation Act. There's a very, very famous regulation act in India, Banking Regulation Act of 1949. So any bank which comes under Banking Regulation Act of 1949 is referred to as a commercial bank. For example, State Bank of India is coming under Banking Regulation Act, right? Let's say ICICI Bank under Banking Regulation Act, regional rural banks under Banking Regulation Act. So a large number of banks in India which come under the regulation of Banking Regulation Act of 1949, these are collectively referred to as commercial banks. Now the commercial banks are divided further into two parts, scheduled banks and non-scheduled banks. What is the idea of a scheduled bank? There is an act by the name of RBI Act of 1934. Is that okay? There is an act by the name of RBI Act of 1934. The function of RBI, the genesis of RBI, the appointments within RBI, the powers of RBI, everything come from RBI Act of 1934. It's not a constitutional body. I hope you understand it now. It's not a constitutional body per se. Even before the independence, government, the then government, passed an act and set up Reserve Bank of India. So RBI Act of 1934 is there. So any bank which is registered, I repeat, any bank which is registered under Schedule 2 of RBI Act, under Schedule 2 of RBI Act, it is called as a scheduled bank. Is the logic okay? Let me repeat it. Any bank which is registered under Schedule 2 of RBI Act of 1934 will be referred to as a scheduled commercial bank. For example, ICICI, Yes Bank, right? SBI, Syndicate Bank, Canara Bank, right? You can think of hundreds of banks in India. All of them are scheduled commercial banks only. And if these are not registered, under the Schedule 2 of RBI Act, this is called as a non-scheduled bank, non-scheduled commercial bank. But is it the only point of difference? That is, you are registered, not registered. Is that the only point of difference? Of course, no. For example, if you are registered under Schedule 2 of RBI Act, you can approach RBI, borrow from RBI. I understand. We'll look at various tools. Don't worry. You can borrow from RBI. But if you're not scheduled under RBI Act of 1934, then the borrowing facilities are not provided to you. Any example of a non-scheduled commercial banks in India? This is just a list of 10 commercial non-scheduled banks in India. Should you by heart it? Absolutely no. Don't waste your time. Do not by heart it. UPSC will not ask you that. Right? What is the most important part within the banking? This is the most important part for you. That is Reserve Bank of India. Now, under the scheduled commercial banks, this is the distribution. You have public sector banks. You have private sector bank. You have regional rural banks, cooperative banks, small finance bank, payment bank, right, etc. And in the process of discussion today as well as tomorrow, we will understand RBI, We'll look at some of the aspects related to public sector banks. We'll understand how the cooperative banks actually work, any reforms in the recent times, what is a payment bank, what is a small finance bank, etc., etc., etc. It's a very big chapter. We'll spend a lot of time on this chapter. But the most important one, let me start with this. Reserve Bank of India, RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Simple points first. Reserve Bank of India was established with the passage of RBI Act of 1934. Government had basically set up one commission, Hilton-Young Commission, and this commission recommended that we should have a central bank. And to begin with, when RBI was established in 1935, that is 1st April 1935, understand this, it was basically owned as a private entity. That is, Government of India then did not own it. It was basically owned by private investors. But understand the next point also very carefully. 1949, 2 years after independence, Government of India nationalized RBI. And I'm pretty sure we have discussed the term nationalization earlier in the last class. Ownership was transferred to Government of India. So 1949, RBI was nationalized. And since then, RBI has been the regulator. Even before that also it was a regulator. But after nationalization, it has continued to act as regulator, the most important aspect of the whole banking structure in India. Initially, in 1935, when it was established, basically the headquarters of Reserve Bank of India was set up in Calcutta. Today it is Kolkata, but then Calcutta. In 1937, the headquarters has been shifted to Mumbai, and since then, the headquarters has remained in Mumbai itself. Even today, the headquarters of RBI is present in Mumbai. But apart from this, please have a glimpse through these provisions or these sections under RBI Act. Very often there is a discussion related to this. Suddenly UPSC can pick up one of these sections, ask you in the preliminary examination. For example, I'll give a very, very simple current affairs connection. Very recently, one of the chief ministers proposed that on the currency notes, we should have Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi. And this is not a new thing in India, right? Before you jump to this side or that side of the political bandwagon, don't worry, this is not a new thing. Earlier also, many of these politicians have proposed we should have goddess Lakshmi as well as Lord Ganapati on these currency notes. It's nothing new. And don't worry, right? There is UPSC will not ask you whether should we have Lakshmi or Ganapati or any god on these particular currency notes. That is one area where UPSC will never enter into. But what is the connection to this list that I've given? For example, have a look at this. Section 22. Please have a look at it. Section 22. RBI has the exclusive rights to issue currency notes in India. Can UPSC ask you this section? I hope you understand this. Many of you will be concerned whether should I buy heart Lord Ganesh, Goddess Lakshmi, this, that, etc. UPSC will never touch that. What UPSC will look at it is, okay, they are talking about currency notes. Who has the right to print currency notes in India? RBI. And what section within the RBI Act talks about currency notes? Section 22. This is how you need to understand. Is it okay? Right, apart from this, other sections are also have provided. Please glimpse through it. Please have a look at it. Right, I'll give you one more section. Section 17. Have a look at it. Section 17 discusses the business that is supposed to be carried out by Reserve Bank of India. Now, many of the times, some of you, when you are wondering about Indian economy, would have thought about this. Why is RBI not involved in mobile manufacturing? Why is RBI not involved in real estate? Why is RBI not purchasing land at lower prices, selling at higher prices, etc., etc., etc.? That is for a very simple reason. Whatever is the function or the business carried out by RBI, it is decided under Section 17 of RBI Act of 1934. And mind you, within section 17 of RBI Act, very limited activities are actually listed. For example, RBI has huge amount of money. All of you will agree with me? RBI has huge amount of money. Why are they not investing anywhere in India? Why are they not investing and setting up a software company? Because how they are supposed to invest is decided under section 17. And remember this, the section 17 limits the amount of investment associated with very less types of government securities. RBI is allowed to invest in government securities issued by Government of India, government securities issued by USA government, etc. like this. They cannot use the money in any other economic activity because it is barred. It is not mentioned under section 17 of RBI Act of 1934. Right? So please be very careful. Questions can be connected to all of these. Right? Do not imagine that they will ask directly from whatever is there in the newspaper. They can connect it to these kind of sections and ask you questions. Next, what is the structure of Reserve Bank of India? Simple 3-pillar structure. The most important pillar is the first one, CBD, Central Board of Directors. Many of you will ask me, sir, what is the long form of CBD? It is there. Section 8 talks about composition of Central Board of Directors. Now, Central Board of Directors, the number of members in the CBD is 21. Simple. It is 21. And I'll tell you a trick. How do you remember this? This is basically almost a mirror image. Not a mirror image, almost a mirror image. 1, 4, 10, 4, 1. Right? It should have been much easier, or it could have been much easier if only this one was there. But there is additional one after. Okay, so 1, 4, 10, 4, 1 plus 1. Almost a mirror image. Not a mirror image, but almost a mirror image. What is this one? RBI Director. I'm sorry, RBI Governor, not Director. RBI Governor. Who appoints RBI Governor? Government. That is the central government appoints RBI Governor. Is it a constitutional position? Answer is no. Everything comes from, right, basically the Reserve Bank of India Act. Right? What is the full form of CBD? My dear, it is already there in the slide now. It is already there in the slide. Okay. So 21 members. One is the RBI Governor appointed by the government. Again, not a constitutional position. Right? Government will decide. Generally, for 3 years they are appointed. The tenure can be extended by another 2 years. Okay. Next 4, up to 4 deputy governors, again appointed by Government of India. Next 10 are experts. Who will appoint? Take a guess. Let's see. Again, Government of India. Experts in different sectors are appointed in the Central Board of Directors. Next 4, we have local boards. Historically, when it was set up, we set up offices in 4 metro cities: Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, and Delhi. And from each of these offices, there is one member who is representing these offices in the Central Board of Directors. That is this 4. Next 1 plus 1 is the government appointees. That is the secretary, finance secretary, as well as the economic affairs secretary. Whoever they are, by default, they will become the members of Central Board of Directors. Done? So understand the logic here. The most important day-to-day decisions of Reserve Bank of India, they are taken by Central Board of Directors. Okay. Apart from this, we also have many other regional offices. Throughout India, we have regional offices which are spread up. For example, you have a regional office in Bangalore. You have a regional office in Kanpur, Hyderabad, Jammu, Jaipur, etc. In many of the cities, we have Reserve Bank of India offices. Done? Right? So these are the members, or let's say this is a structure of Reserve Bank of India. Now, the most important part and parcel of RBI, most important, the functions of Reserve Bank of India. What are the functions? What is the role of RBI? Let's go one by one. First one is RBI plays a very important role in controlling inflation. I will not be discussing this today because it is already covered in the last chapter, that is inflation. Not immediately the last chapter, a chapter before that. Last week, I hope remember that, we have discussed a concept called as inflation targeting, wherein in 2015, there was an agreement between the government as well as RBI, Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, wherein the responsibility of controlling inflation has been given to RBI. So it is already covered. It's basically a revision of what you have learnt earlier. But other functions, we'll have a discussion, all of them one by one individually. Printing of currency notes. Now the first point, very important point, please remember this. Currency notes are printed. Fiat money could be currency notes or currency coins. Is it okay? The fiat currencies could be coins or could be, right, notes. Currency notes are printed. Currency coins are minted. One is printing and the other one is minting. Point 1. Point 2. The printing of currency notes, the right to that is given to Reserve Bank of India, RBI. And if you talk about currency coins, these are minted by Government of India. There are various acts. Under various acts, we have divided these powers between the government as well as RBI. And it makes perfect sense. Why? Sir, you will ask me, sir, why does government not print currency notes? My dear, RBI plays the most important role of regulating money supply. To increase or decrease the money supply, it is basically decided mostly because of the monetary policy of RBI. It is because of monetary policy of RBI. Now you tell me, RBI is deciding to increase or decrease money supply. Do you think Government of India printing currency notes makes a sense there? Makes any sense? So that is the reason under various acts, there is a Coinage Act, that is Currency Act, etc., etc. Under this, the right of printing currency notes except rupee 1 note is given to RBI. And the currency coins, which are very, very small denomination and compared to notes, very small in circulation as well, the right of minting the currency coins is given to Government of India. Now many of you will basically say, sir, why is that 1 rupee note is printed by Government of India? The argument is very simple. As per the Coinage Act, remember this, as per the Coinage Act, as far as all the purposes are concerned, 1 rupee note will be counted as a coin itself. I will repeat the statement. As per the Coinage Act, as per all the conventions, 1 rupee note will not be counted as a note, will be counted as a coin. And who has the right to mint the coins in India? It is Government of India. And Government of India, by providing sovereign guarantee, will actually print and issue these 1 rupee currency notes, right, in addition to minting of currency coins in India. Now, it's the RBI which will print currency notes and also distribute the currency notes in the economy. Right now, that is post 1996, we have introduced the currency notes which are famously referred to as Mahatma Gandhi series. That is, if you take up any currency note, sir 500, sir 200, sir 2000 rupees, etc. Please open the currency note. On the front side of the currency note, you will see the bust of Mahatma Gandhi ji. I understand? You will see the bust of Mahatma Gandhi ji. For example, in this currency note, you can see it here. You can take up 2000 rupee note. You can take up 20 rupee note. You can take up, let's say, 50 rupee note, 100 rupee note. In every currency note, you will see the bust of Mahatma Gandhi ji. Hence, this is called as a Mahatma Gandhi series. So, before that, which currency notes were there? Before that, different types of series have been issued by RBI. In some currency notes, satellite image was printed. In some of the currency notes, right, the agriculture sector was printed. In some of the currency notes, RBI logo was printed. But post 1996, we have started printing and distributing Mahatma Gandhi series currency notes. Now, where are these currency notes printed in India? There are 4 places where the printing of the currency notes actually takes place. These are Devas, Nasik, Salbani and Mysore. Dewas is in Madhya Pradesh, Salbani is in West Bengal, Nasik is in Maharashtra, and the fourth one, that is Mysore, is in Karnataka. So these are the 4 places where printing presses are there, and in these printing presses, the securities, these are nothing but securities, these securities or the currency notes are actually printed, then given to RBI for distribution purposes. Done? Right, so these are certain important points. The first 2 printing presses are owned by Government of India. The next 2 printing presses are owned by Reserve Bank of India. Simple. The first 2 are owned by government. The next 2 are owned by Reserve Bank of India. Right, so this is the discussion regarding the printing of the currency notes. Right, now, next important function of RBI, RBI will act as a banker to the government. Right, Reserve Bank of India will act as banker to government. Meaning what? RBI will arrange for finances of the Government of India. RBI will maintain money of Government of India. Now, is it just associated with Government of India? When you say banker to the government, is it just associated with the central government? Answer is simply no. RBI will act as a banker to government even in the context of state governments also. That is basically RBI will ensure that the finances of the center and state, money of the center and state is maintained in an account with the Reserve Bank of India. Now, within the concept of banker to government, you need to understand certain very, very important concepts. And this is where we will have a discussion of a lot of these concepts. Let's try and understand this. So follow this carefully. Whenever you talk about RBI's function as a banker to government, logic is very simple. Government, in every year's budget, government spends money and earns money. Government will spend money and also earn money. All of you are clear with this? But generally what you find is the spending of Government of India is greater than earning of Government of India. Simple. The amount that the Government of India spends is more than amount that it actually earns, which means there is a shortfall. There is a shortage of money with the government. Now the question arises, how will the Government of India take care of it? How will Government of India adjust for this particular shortage? I'll take a simple number so that you understand. Imagine the expenditure of the Government of India is 100 and the amount of income that the government has earned is, let's say, 80 rupees. Now, is it okay if I say the shortage in this context is simply 20 rupees? Government needs extra 20 rupees. So what will the government do here? Government simply will borrow this money. And that is where RBI will come into picture. Follow this. Government will simply borrow this money. But have a look at this. The borrowing done by the government can be internal, that is within the domestic market. The government can also go to World Bank. Government can also go to IMF. Government can also go to, let's say, BRICS Bank. Borrow from these banks. But in that context, we'll simply call this as external borrowing. Any doubts? Let me know. Fact is very simple. We are going step by step. Government every year announces expenditure as well as income. But generally what you see, its expenditure is greater than the income. So what does the government do? It will borrow money. But this borrowing can be done from the domestic market, that is within India, or the borrowing can also be done from outside India. Whenever, right, they are going to borrow from outside India, we'll call this as external borrowing. And whenever they borrow within the domestic market, we'll call this as internal borrowing. Now, understand this very carefully. When you borrow, will you repay the amount? Borrowing means what? You will have to repay the amount. All of you will agree? Because I'm going to use one more term here. And when you have to repay, can I call this as an obligation? Is it okay? When you have to repay something, can I call this as an obligation? Rather than using the term obligation, they will use the term debt. Let me know. Rather than using the term obligation of payment, they'll simply replace that with the term debt. Meaning what? Government has a debt. What does it represent? It simply represents the fact that government has borrowed money, government has to repay the money. All of you will agree? I'll repeat it. Right? Government has borrowed means there is an obligation of the government to repay the money. They have to do that. Otherwise, you'll become Sri Lanka or you'll become worst case Pakistan then. So they have borrowed money, they have to repay it. And this obligation of repayment, I'll simply call this as a debt. Now, can I use the same term and say, if you're borrowing money from the domestic market, I'll call this as internal debt. And if you borrow money from external sources, I will call this as external debt. Is it okay? If you borrow from the domestic market, that repayment obligation, I'll call this as internal debt. If you borrow from external market, let's say from USA, right, or IMF or World Bank, etc., I'll call this as external debt. Any difficulty in understanding the terminologies internal debt and external debt? Let me know. Now, in the context of India, right, please remember this. Out of the total debt of the government, external debt is very, very small. I'll repeat the statement. Out of the total debt of government of India, external debt is very, very small. Very, very small. How much? As per the latest economic survey, only around 4.9% of the debt, only around 4.9% of the debt of the government is external in nature. Remaining is internal in nature. Right? Which means out of the total liabilities, out of the total money that the government has to pay, only 5% they have to pay to the international market. Remaining 95% they will have to pay it within the domestic market. And please remember, it is a good feature for the Indian economy, or for that matter any economy. This is considered to be a good feature. Why? Simple logic. Understand the simple logic. You have borrowed money, you will have to repay. Now, whenever you have borrowed most of it from the domestic market, you have to repay. Imagine you do not have rupees, because in the domestic market, the repayment has to happen in rupees. Imagine you don't have rupees. You can print more rupees. There is a concern of inflation because the money supply increases. There is a concern of inflation, but doesn't matter. You can keep the inflation concern on the side, print more currencies, use it to repay the loan. All of you will agree with me? Any issues, let me know. Right? On the other hand, imagine you have borrowed from the external market, which means you'll have to repay in dollars. Can you print dollars? Right? Can government of India simply say there are 4 printing presses, right? Let's start printing dollars. You're not allowed to do that. So don't you think having very less exposure in the form of external debt works in favor of India? It is an indicator to basically show that even if something happens in the international market, India need not be worried. Fundamentals are strong. Right? External risk is very, very less for India, etc. like this. Right? So these are certain very, very important points regarding internal debt as well as external debt. Can I go to the next one? Now, when you talk about internal debt, most of the internal debt or substantial part of the internal debt basically is because government borrows by issuing securities in the market. By issuing securities in the market. For example, right, sir, what do you mean by security? I'll take the same piece of paper that I used earlier. Right? Imagine government of India has, right, or the government is holding this particular piece of paper. They will hand it over to you. They will borrow money from you. That is basically borrowing. Is the logic okay? Let me know. Government will issue these securities, piece of paper. Security is nothing but these are instruments which are traded, which are used in the market. So government of India is holding this security. They will issue this security to you, sell the security to you, and in return they will borrow money from you. Now this borrowing can be divided under two heads. I hope you understand. This borrowing can be divided under two heads. One, borrowing that is done for a period up to 1 year. The borrowing that is done for a period up to 1 year, and borrowing that is done for a period more than 1 year. I'll repeat it again. The borrowing that is done by the government can be divided into two parts. One, borrowing which is done for a period up to 1 year or less than 1 year. I'll simply call this as short-term borrowing. Government borrowing, right? Government borrowing for a period more than 1 year, I'll simply call this as long-term borrowing. Now, how can the government borrow? Simple. Government will issue securities which will have a maturity period of 91 days or 182 days or 364 days. Again, please make a note of this. Less than 1 year. 91, 182, 364 days. Right? Up to 1 year. And these securities are traditionally referred to as treasury bills. That is, in simple terms, I will issue this security to you. I will borrow money for 91 days. I will issue this security to you. I will borrow for 162 days. Sorry, 182 days or 364 days. And after the tenure is over, I will return the money to you with interest. That's it. Right? But because the tenure is less than 1 year, these are traditionally referred to as treasury bills. But on the other hand, if I issue the same security to you for 2 years, for 5 years, for 7 years, 10 years, 14 years, 30 years, 40 years, these are called as dated securities. Okay, these are referred to as dated securities. Is the logic okay? Right, government will issue securities which will have a maturity period up to 1 year, more than 1 year. Up to 1 year, these are referred to as treasury bills. More than 1 year, these are referred to as dated securities. And remember this, the dated securities are also referred to as government bonds. I'll repeat it. The dated securities are also referred to as government bonds. Why these are referred as government bond? Whenever you use the term bond, maturity period is more than 1 year. I'll repeat it again. Whenever you use the term bond, maturity period is generally more than 1 year. And what is the maturity period of dated securities? More than 1 year. So these are also generally referred to as government bonds. Right? Any doubts so far? Any doubts so far? Right? So treasury bills, dated securities are issued by the government. Right? These are sold in the market and the government borrows from the market. Right? Basically for a short duration or for a long duration. And remember this, just factual information. Right now the bonds which are issued by the government, the highest period of maturity, for a bond which has been issued is 40 years. This is right, the factual information can be asked by UPSC in the prelims. Right? Can be asked in the UPSC in the prelims. So can T-bills be issued by the state government? By the way, treasury bills are also referred to as T-bills, by the way. So T-bills are not issued by the state government. Only the central government is allowed to issue T-bills. Now many of you will ask, sir, what if the state government wants to borrow for short duration? I'll come to that. There is a method, tomorrow I'll explain to you. There is a method called as Ways and Means Advances, WMA. In that context, the state governments are allowed to borrow for a shorter duration from Reserve Bank of India. And there is a tool. But be very careful here. Treasury bills are issued only by the central government, not by the states. Dated securities, that is the government bonds, central government is allowed to issue, even the state government is also allowed to issue. Whenever the state government will issue bonds, these are called as state development loans. Whenever the state government issues bonds, these are referred to as state development loans, SDL. Done? Right, so this is the discussion regarding the government securities which they can use to borrow from the market, either for short duration or long duration. Tomorrow, we'll stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow, we'll start from how does RBI play a role here? Very, very important. What does RBI do? Right? Why RBI is such a very important institution for Government of India in the market, etc., etc., will basically pick up from this concept of government borrowing from the market using treasury bill as well as dated securities. But before that, let me address the questions. What are treasury bills? Treasury bills are government securities which are issued by the government to borrow from the market only for short duration, up to 1 year. Suppose government take money from RBI and after an election, new government, then who will pay the money? Whoever has formed the government, they will pay the money. Don't have these kind of doubts. Sir, if old government will borrow, will the new government pay? Government is important. Which political party is there in the government is not important. I hope you understand. If a new political party forms a government and they say earlier government has borrowed, I will not repay it, then in the future, who will give loan to Government of India? Think of it. Okay. What was the name of the tree located in? Don't worry about all of this. Government have own printing and minting control, then why take debt? My dear, I've already addressed this. If government keeps on printing because they have a printing press, don't you think the money supply in the market will increase? There is no production and supply of goods, but government keeps on printing money and supplies it in the market. Right? Do you think that is a right approach to maintaining stability in the economy? That will contribute to inflation. Very, very greatly that will contribute to inflation. What does it mean, the term macroeconomic factors? Basically, whenever you look at certain parameters for a particular economy, for example, fiscal deficit, for example, inflation, or for that matter, let's say government debt, these are generally indicated and used to represent the stability of a government or the policies of the government in a particular economy. Can't we have gold backing? Gold backing is generally used to borrow money. We have pledged gold. For example, 1991, we pledged a huge amount of gold that was there with us to borrow money from the market, right? Not in the domestic market, but international market. But why? Why do you want to use gold pledging now? They can directly borrow from IMF. They can directly borrow from World Bank. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions you people have? Real GDP. Real GDP is basically GDP accounted with inflation. We have discussed this. Whenever you calculate GDP using the base year prices, that GDP is called as real GDP. So do gold bonds come under dated securities? Right? If you're talking about, let's say, sovereign gold bonds, then the answer is yes. How does RBI decide to print money? We'll understand that tomorrow, my dear. We have basically scratched the surface of RBI. Right? Tomorrow we will understand this. Right? Money supply, right? When they will decide to increase money supply, reduce money supply, etc., etc. We'll discuss that tomorrow. Don't worry. Done then. Okay, done. Let me stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow we'll start from what is the role of RBI in the economy when government wants to borrow. That is where we'll actually start from. Done. So tomorrow will be very, very important for you people in the context of Reserve Bank of India. Please do join sharp at 10 a.m. tomorrow. 10 a.m. by the way. Okay. That's it from my side then. Take care. See you tomorrow.